It was a quiet afternoon on the dusty plains of Texas, where the sun hung low in the sky like a golden coin suspended between heaven and earth. The air shimmered with heat waves that danced across the parched land, and the only sound was a faint rustle of dry grass bending under an invisible breeze. In this desolate expanse stood a ranch, a modest collection of wooden structures surrounded by vast fields of grazing land. It belonged to John Carter, a man whose life revolved around cattle, horses, and the endless struggle against nature's cruelty. But today, something strange had happened, something that defied explanation. John sat atop his horse, Thunder, staring at the pasture gate with growing frustration. Behind him, his hired hand, Tom, shifted uncomfortably in his saddle. Before them stretched the open field where their herd should have been peacefully grazing. Instead, the cows lingered near the fence line, refusing to enter. They milled about aimlessly, some mooing softly, while others simply stood still as if frozen in place. No amount of coaxing or prodding seemed to make a difference. "What do you reckon's wrong with them?" Tom finally asked, breaking the silence. John didn't answer immediately. His eyes narrowed as he scanned the scene before him. "I don't know," he admitted gruffly after a moment. "But there's something here ain't right." Little did they know, the mystery ran deeper than either of them could imagine. The day had started normally enough. Dawn broke over the horizon, painting the sky in hues of pink and orange. John rose early as always to check on his livestock. He found the herd gathered close to the barn, which wasn't unusual during the cooler hours of morning. But when it came time to move them into the pasture, trouble began. At first, John thought it might just be stubbornness. Cows were known for such behavior, but as the minutes ticked by and the animals remained obstinate, he grew increasingly uneasy. Tom suggested checking the fence for damage. Perhaps a stray branch or rock had fallen across the path, spooking the cattle. Together, they dismounted and inspected the area carefully. The wooden posts stood firm, their weathered surfaces marked by years of exposure to wind and rain. The wire fencing showed no signs of breakage. Everything appeared perfectly normal. And yet, the cows refused to budge. "They're scared of something," Tom muttered, scratching his chin thoughtfully. "You ever see him act like this before?" "No," John replied curtly, "and I don't like it." As the sun climbed higher, casting its relentless heat upon the land, John decided to take matters into his own hands. He grabbed a long stick from the ground and approached the herd slowly, trying not to startle them further. With deliberate movements, he tapped one of the lead cows gently on the flank, urging her forward. To his surprise, she flinched violently, letting out a sharp cry that echoed through the stillness of the plains. "Easy now," John soothed, though his voice carried a note of alarm. "What's got into you?" Tom watched from a distance, his brow furrowed. Maybe it's something buried beneath the fence line. Could be something they can smell or feel. Buried? The word sent a shiver down John's spine, though he couldn't explain why. Reluctantly, he nodded, grabbed a shovel, then, "We'll dig up the ground and see what's both there and By midday, the two men were sweating profusely as they worked tirelessly along the fence line. Dust kicked up around them, coating their clothes and skin in fine layers of grit. Each swing of the shovel revealed more dirt, but nothing extraordinary, just compacted earth, baked hard by the summer sun. Until Tom let out a startled yelp, causing John to spin around quickly. "What is it?" John demanded, gripping the handle of his shovel tightly. "I hit something," Tom exclaimed, leaning closer to examine the spot where he'd struck. Carefully, he cleared away the loose soil with his hands, revealing a dark shape beneath the surface. Whatever it was, it glinted faintly in the sunlight. Heart pounding, John dropped to his knees beside Tom. Together, they dug furiously, uncovering a large object partially embedded in the ground. As more dirt was removed, the outline became clearer. It was a box, an old weathered chest made of wood, its once smooth surface now cracked and splintered with age. "Well, I'll be damned," Tom whispered, all evident in his tone. John said nothing, his gaze fixed intently on the discovery. Slowly, he reached out and pried the lid open. Inside lay a jumble of items wrapped in cloth, each piece carefully preserved despite the passage of time. Among them were letters, photographs, and small trinkets, all relics of another era. But the most striking item was a journal, its leather binding worn but intact. John picked it up reverently, flipping through the yellowed pages until he found an entry written in neat handwriting. March 17th, 1865. Today marks the end of our journey. This land holds secrets too terrible to share, yet I must record them lest they be forgotten entirely. Beneath the earth lies a truth hidden from all who tread above. Let future generations beware. John stopped reading aloud, his throat suddenly dry. He glanced at Tom, who looked equally stunned. "What does it mean?" Tom asked, voicing the question lingering in both their minds. "I don't know," John admitted quietly, "but we're about to find out." Night fell swiftly, blanketing the plains in darkness punctuated only by the soft glow of stars overhead. John and Tom returned to the excavation site, armed with lanterns and determination. Guided by the cryptic words in the journal, they continued digging, inch by painstaking inch. Hours passed, and just when exhaustion threatened to overwhelm them, they struck something solid again. This time it wasn't a chest. It was a coffin. The realization hit them like a punch to the gut. Both men froze, staring at the ominous shape emerging from the dirt. A heavy silence settled between them, broken only by the distant howl of a coyote somewhere in the hills. "We shouldn't," Tom began hesitantly, but John cut him off with a sharp gesture. "We've come this far," John said firmly, though his voice betrayed a hint of unease. "We need to know what's down there." With trembling hands, they unearthed the coffin completely, revealing carvings etched into its surface, symbols neither man recognized. Gritting his teeth, John pried open the lid, expecting anything. What he saw nearly made him drop the lantern. Inside the coffin lay bones, not human bones, but animal bones. Hundreds of them, arranged in a pattern that seemed deliberate rather than random. Interspersed among the remains were shards of pottery and pieces of metal, corroded beyond recognition. Tom swallowed hard, his face pale in the flickering light. "What kind of creature?" Before John could respond, a low rumble emanated from the ground beneath their feet. The earth trembled slightly, sending vibrations rippling outward. Panic surged within them as they scrambled back, watching in horror as the ground split apart along the fence line. From the fissure emerged shapes, twisted, unnatural forms that defied logic. Shadows writhed and coiled, rising into the air like living smoke. The cows nearby let out terrified bellows, fleeing in every direction. John and Tom exchanged a glance, their expressions mirroring each other's shock and disbelief. Little did they know, the true purpose of fence had never been to keep the cattle in. Its real function was far darker, to contain whatever lay buried beneath. As the shadows advanced, John clenched his fists, defiance burning in his eyes. "We won't run," he declared, stepping forward despite the danger. "Not tonight." And so began a battle unlike any other, fought not with guns or knives, but with courage and resolve. For in the Wild West, sometimes the greatest threats came not from bandits or outlaws, but from mysteries buried deep within the land itself. The shadows lunged forward, their movements fluid yet unpredictable, defying the laws of physics. John and Tom stood their ground, adrenaline coursing through their veins as they prepared for what lay ahead. The lanterns flickered wildly, casting eerie patterns on the trembling earth around them. For a moment, the world seemed suspended in time, the only sounds being the distant rustle of wind and the heavy breathing of two men facing an unimaginable foe. John tightened his grip on the shovel, using it as both a weapon and a shield. "Tom," he whispered urgently, "we need to think fast. These things aren't normal. They're not like anything we've ever faced." Tom nodded, his hands gripping the handle of his own makeshift weapon, a sturdy branch torn from a nearby tree. "We can't fight him head-on," he replied, his voice barely audible above the rising tension. "But maybe we can scare him off. Fire might work." Fire. The word ignited a spark of hope amidst the chaos. Without hesitation, John grabbed one of the lanterns and tipped it carefully, spilling oil onto the dry grass at his feet. He struck a match with practiced precision, lighting the fuel in a burst of flame that illuminated the night sky. The sudden brightness caused the shadows to recoil momentarily, their forms wavering as if unsure how to respond. "It's working!" Tom shouted, emboldened by the brief reprieve. He mimicked John's actions, creating another fiery barrier between them and the encroaching darkness. Together, they formed a circle of fire, its warmth contrasting sharply with the icy dread creeping up their spines. But the respite was short-lived. The shadows began to adapt, twisting and writhing in ways that defied logic. Some darted toward the flames, only to retreat when burned, while others hovered just beyond reach, studying their opponents with unsettling intelligence. It became clear that brute force alone wouldn't suffice. Strategy would be key to survival. "Tom, grab those bones from the coffin," John ordered, pointing toward the partially uncovered remains still lying near the edge of the dig site. "There's got to be something about them that'll help us figure this out." Tom hesitated, but obeyed, rushing back to retrieve several of the largest bones. As he examined them under the dim light of the remaining lantern, he noticed intricate carvings etched into the surface, symbols similar to those decorating the coffin itself. His eyes widened as realization dawned. "John, these marks, they're warnings. Look here." He held up one of the bones, showing John a series of lines that translated roughly to "do not disturb." Beneath it were more symbols, ones neither man could decipher without further study. But the meaning was clear enough. Whoever or whatever had placed these artifacts had done so deliberately, intending to keep whatever lay beneath the fence line sealed away forever. "And now we've gone and broken the seal," John muttered darkly, frustration lacing his tone. "Great. Just great." As the hours dragged on, the battle shifted from physical combat to psychological warfare. The shadows seemed less interested in attacking directly and more focused on sowing fear and confusion. Their shapes morphed constantly, taking forms that evoked memories long buried in the minds of the two men. John saw flashes of his late wife, her ghostly figure beckoning him toward the void. Tom heard whispers of his childhood home, destroyed years ago in a fire that claimed half his family. Both men fought against the illusions, clinging to reality with every fiber of their being. "Don't look away," John barked, shaking himself free of the vision plaguing him. "Focus on the fire. Keep moving." They danced along the perimeter of their flaming barricade, striking out whenever a shadow ventured too close. Exhaustion clawed at their limbs, but they refused to give in. Somewhere deep inside, a stubborn determination kept them going, a refusal to let the unknown win. And then, just as hope began to wane, an unexpected ally arrived. From the distance came the sound of hooves pounding against the earth, growing louder with each passing second. Out of the darkness emerged a lone rider, silhouetted against the moonlight. The figure reined in their horse mere yards from the fray, staring intently at the scene before them. John squinted, trying to make out the stranger's features, but all he could see was a wide-brimmed hat and a long coat flapping in the breeze. "You folks need some help?" the rider called out, their voice calm despite the chaos surrounding them. John hesitated, unsure whether to trust the newcomer, but desperation outweighed caution, and he nodded tersely. "Yeah, whatever you are, you better be good at fighting monsters." The rider dismounted smoothly, revealing themselves to be a woman clad in leather armor adorned with strange runes. She carried a sword unlike any John had ever seen. Its blade shimmered faintly, as though forged from starlight itself. "Monsters, huh?" she mused, glancing at the writhing shadows. "Interesting. I've been tracking these kind of anomalies for years. Looks like I found the source." Without waiting for further explanation, she charged into the fray, her blade slicing through the air with deadly accuracy. Each strike sent ripples of energy cascading outward, causing the shadows to shriek and dissolve into nothingness. John and Tom watched in awe as she worked, her movements precise and efficient, leaving no room for error. Within minutes, the last of the shadows vanished, retreating back into the fissure they had emerged from. The ground sealed itself shut once more, leaving behind only scorched earth and a lingering scent of sulfur. The woman turned to face the two men, wiping her blade clean on her sleeve. "Well," she said casually, "that wasn't so bad." John stared at her, his jaw slack. Who are you?" My name's Elena, she replied, tipping her hat slightly. I'm a hunter. Or rather, I hunt things most people don't believe exist. And judging by the look on your faces, you got quite the story to tell. Over the next few hours, the trio sat together by the dying embers of the fire, sharing tales and piecing together the puzzle of what had transpired. Elena listened intently as John recounted the discovery of the chest and the journal, nodding occasionally as though confirming suspicions she'd already harbored. This land has been cursed for generations, she explained gravely. Long ago, a group of settlers stumbled upon something ancient, something they shouldn't have disturbed. To protect themselves, they buried it deep beneath the earth, marking the spot with warnings meant to deter future intruders. Unfortunately, over time, the knowledge faded, and the curse remained dormant until someone reopened the seal. John frowned, guilt weighing heavily on his shoulders. So it's our fault. Me and Tom, we dug it up. Elena sighed, placing a reassuring hand on his shoulder. Not entirely. Curses like this have a way of finding their way back to the surface eventually. You just happen to be the ones who triggered it. But now that it's been dealt with, there's one more thing we need to do. What's that? Tom asked cautiously. Burn the evidence, Elena said simply. If we leave even a single bone or scrap of paper behind, the cycle could start all over again. Trust me, you don't want that. Reluctantly, John and Tom agreed, gathering the content of the chest and tossing them into the fire. As the flames consumed the artifacts, a sense of finality settled over the group. The danger had passed for now. As dawn broke over the horizon, painting the sky in hues of gold and crimson, the three companions parted ways. Elena rode off into the distance, her mission complete, while John and Tom returned to the ranch, weary but alive. The herd, having scattered during the night, gradually made its way back to the pasture, seemingly unharmed by the events of the previous evening. Yet as John gazed out across the open field, he couldn't shake the feeling that the land still held secrets waiting patiently for the next curious soul to uncover them. And though he vowed never to dig again, deep down, he knew the allure of mystery would always call to him, for in the Wild West, sometimes the greatest adventures began with the simplest questions and ended with answers no one dared to imagine. The days that followed were marked by an uneasy calm. John and Tom worked tirelessly to restore order to the ranch, their movements heavy with the weight of what they had witnessed. The cows, once again grazing peacefully in the pasture, seemed oblivious to the horrors that had unfolded beneath their hooves. Yet, for John and Tom, the memory lingered like a shadow cast across their minds, refusing to fade. John often found himself glancing toward the fence line, where the ground now bore no sign of the fissure or the unearthly creatures that had emerged from it. It was as though the earth itself had healed, erasing all evidence of the night's terrors. But John knew better. He knew that some wounds ran deeper than the eye could see, buried beneath layers of dirt and time, waiting for the right moment to resurface. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, John sat on the porch of his cabin, staring out at the vast expanse of land before him. His thoughts drifted back to the journal they had discovered, its pages filled with cryptic entries and warnings that still haunted him. There was one passage in particular that gnawed at his mind, a sentence scrawled in the margins that he hadn't mentioned to Tom or Elena. Beneath the earth lies a truth hidden from all who tread above. Let future generations beware. What truth was the writer referring to, and why they felt compelled to bury it so deeply? These questions swirled in John's mind, driving him to distraction. He couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to the story, more pieces of the puzzle waiting to be uncovered. Tom joined him on the porch, a tin cup of coffee in hand. "You've been awful quiet lately," he observed, taking a seat beside John. "Still thinking about that night?" John nodded, his gaze fixed on the horizon. "I can't stop wondering about it, Tom. About what we didn't find." Tom frowned, setting down his cup. "Didn't find? What do you mean?" "I mean," John hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "That journal. The writer mentioned a truth hidden beneath the earth. But we only scratched the surface, literally and figuratively. What if there's more? What if we didn't uncover everything?" Tom stared at him, clearly unsettled by the suggestion. "Are you saying you want to go back?" To dig again? No, John replied quickly, shaking his head. Not yet, but I think we need to learn more about this land, about its history. Maybe then we'll understand why those things were buried here in the first place. Tom leaned back, crossing his arms. And how do you propose we do that? Ask around town? Most folks around here don't even know their own names, let alone the secrets of the past. John smiled faintly. Maybe not, but there's always someone who knows something. Someone who's been here longer than anyone else. The next morning, John saddled Thunder and rode into town, determined to seek answers. The small settlement buzzed with activity as usual, merchants shouting their wares and children chasing each other through the dusty streets. John tied his horse outside the general store and made his way to the saloon, hoping to find someone willing to talk. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of whiskey and tobacco smoke. A few patrons sat at the bar, their faces lined with the weariness of hard lives. John scanned the room until his eyes landed on a figure hunched over a corner table, a man whose weathered appearance suggested he'd seen more than his fair share of years. Approaching cautiously, John introduced himself. "Evening, mister. Mind if I join you?" The man looked up, his eyes sharp despite the lines etched into his face. "Depends on what you're looking for," he replied gruffly. "Answers," John said simply. "I hear you've been around these parts longer than most." The man chuckled dryly, gesturing for John to take a seat. "That I have. Name's Hank. And what kind of answers are you after?" John hesitated, unsure how much to reveal. "This land, the one just outside of town. Do you know anything about it? Its history, maybe?" Hank studied him for a long moment before speaking. "That land's been troubled since the day the first settlers laid eyes on it. Folks used to call it the cursed ground. No one would go near it, not unless they had to." "Why?" John pressed, leaning forward. "What happened there?" Hank sighed, swirling the contents of his glass. "Stories vary, but the gist is the same. Long ago, before your grandparents were born, a group of settlers came through here. They were looking for a place to build a home, start fresh, found the spot, thought it was perfect, but soon after they settled in, strange things started happening. Crops failed, livestock died, people disappeared without a trace." John listened intently, every word fueling his curiosity. "And then what? Did they leave?" "Some did," Hank admitted, "but others stayed, trying to figure out what was wrong. That's when they found it, the thing buried beneath the ground. Some say it was a treasure chest full of gold. Others claim it was something darker, something unnatural. Whatever it was, they sealed away, built fences to keep it contained. And ever since, folks have avoided that land like the plague." John's heart raced as he pieced together the fragments of the tale. It matched the journal's account almost perfectly. "Do you know where the settlers went? Or if anyone survived?" Hank shook his head. "No one knows for sure. Some say they left, never looking back. Others believe they stayed, guarding the secret till the end. Either way, the land's been quiet ever since. Until now, I reckon." Armed with new information, John returned to the ranch, eager to share his findings with Tom. Together, they pored over maps and old records, searching for any clue that might lead them closer to the truth. Days turned into weeks as they delved deeper into the mystery, uncovering fragments of a story that defied explanation. It was during one such investigation that they stumbled upon a map tucked away in the attic of the main house, a map marked with symbols identical to those carved into the coffin and bones. At its center was a single word: sanctuary. "What do you think it means?" Tom asked, tracing the word with his finger. John's expression darkened. "I think it's where we need to go next." Under the cover of night, John and Tom set out once more, guided by the map's cryptic markings. The journey took them far beyond the familiar boundaries of the ranch, deep into uncharted territory, where the air grew colder and the stars seemed brighter. Along the way, they encountered signs of ancient presence, stone markers half buried in the earth, carvings etched into trees, and paths worn smooth by countless footsteps. Finally, they reached their destination, A clearing surrounded by towering trees, their branches twisting skyward like skeletal fingers. At the heart of the clearing stood a structure unlike anything they had ever seen, a circular stone building adorned with intricate designs that pulsed faintly with an otherworldly light. "This must be it," John whispered, his voice trembling with awe and trepidation. "The sanctuary." As they approached, the door creaked open of its own accord, revealing a dimly lit interior filled with rows of shelves holding countless artifacts. Among them were scrolls, books, and objects that glowed softly, radiating an energy that made the hair on her arms stand on end. Tom glanced at John, his expression wary. "Should we go in?" John hesitated, weighing the risks, but the pull of curiosity was too strong to resist. "We've come this far. Might as well see what's inside." Stepping cautiously into the sanctuary, they were immediately struck by the overwhelming sense of history that permeated the air. Each artifact told a story, a fragment of a larger narrative that spanned centuries. As they explored, they uncovered clues that shed light on the true nature of the curse and its origins. It wasn't a simple matter of buried treasure or forgotten graves. The truth was far more complex, involving forces beyond human comprehension. And as John and Tom delved deeper, they realized that the answers they sought came with a price, one they may not be prepared to pay. For in the Wild West, sometimes the greatest discoveries came at the cost of the soul itself.